divine love, what comes to your mind? Yes, please go ahead. Wrath. Every, Mhm. To conflicting things. So there is some conflict here. Yes, I saw your hand. Please. God's judgment. Okay? So love, wrath seems conflicting. There's some judgment going on. Love. Hmm. So anger in a good way. There is a conflict here too, right? Anger. Do we ever connect anger with good in this world? Maybe. And when we go on to the verse, it says, "But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity and did not destroy them." Yes, many a times he turned his anger away and did not stir up all his wrath. We are studying about the wrath, and here the verse talks about his compassion, right? When we even talk about wrath in the context of divine love, it is compassion that oozes over. It's compassion and his love that stands supreme. We need to go a little deeper to really take it apart and try to understand. In the New Testament and in Old Testament, we see people describing God's character with a contrast, right? How do they describe the God of New Testament? Loving and kind. How do they describe the God of Old Testament? Wrath, justice, where he says, "Go kill." Where was God's kindness there? Was he a God of love in the Old Testament too? Yes. Where do we see his love?
Sinfulness was invading. It has a way to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
I speak loud. So sometimes it's necessary to put an end, like he did in the flood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he put an end in the flood. So, and where else? That is his something that was done to stop things. Yes. What else? Where else?
He also showed his love when the Israelites, they were doing wrong, and he would go again and take them where they are imprisoned with their wrongs, and bring them back again. And they would come, but they would do the same, and he will go again and take them every time. It is a similar like illustration he gave to this prophet, that he said, "Go and marry a prostitute." We are just like that, because God comes to us, he takes us, then we go far away again, and he comes and buy us
Back.
with everything that we have and bring us back, and we go again, and we keep doing that. But he keeps keeping us together with our consequences.
Interesting. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's like natural consequences. You watch your child do something, right? And you're like, you've told them not to. So then you let them, okay, fine. You're going to do that. and there's going to be a consequence. So you're allowing them to suffer at that point, because once they've learned the lesson, they won't do it again. You hope, but you know what I mean.
Okay. Yes.
For me, I see God's compassion in when he was compassionate with Abraham and went to him and talked to him about Sodom and Gomorrah. And he allowed Abraham to keep asking him, well, if 50 righteous, if 40 righteous, if 20 righteous, if 10 righteous, will you kill everyone? But he was really concerned about his nephew Lot. And so God was compassionate in that the angels went, got Lot and his family out the city before they destroyed the city. So there we see his wrath and his compassion.
That's wonderful. We, time and again, keep seeing God's intervention, right? The flood came, but there was a family of 8 people in the ark, protected, right? So the natural consequences, God allows it. Breaking his law has dire consequences. The wages of sin is death. We have life in God. But when we are separating from his presence, there's no life. There is no life. And so we keep seeing those things played out in the Old Testament. God of love, you know, the love when he created, right in the beginning of the Old Testament, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And his personal involvement, day by day, setting things up, preparing for the humanity. You know, there was love in everything. He made sure everything was good, right? And when he created man, he said it was very good. So there we see his involvement, his love. And then, after sin, we see the consequences of sin that's played out. Rebellion, going away from God, he bringing them back in his love. The compassion, he allows them certain consequences to an extent that it is redemptive, right? So when they went, there was Achan who hid because of his greed. He allowed the Israelites to be defeated at Ai. But then he showed them what was wrong, took that away, and then he brings them on to victory, right? It was his personal involvement in redemptive love, correcting as a parent would correct the child. And his involvement was always there. He never in his anger turned away and said, let them all perish. I'm going to make a new world where this would never happen. He never went to that decision. He was there loving. His love was, another thing. So here we are seeing the consequences that were meted out for people who were really rebellious, death, and at the same time, his redemptive, corrective influences on the people he had chosen, right? We keep contrasting that. So people who chose to leave his presence and be outside, and people who chose to be with him but still sinned, still fell, still made wrong choices. The Israelites were led out of Egypt. They came. At one point, they said, Lord, whatever you say, we will do. And then they turned back and complained and murmured and were slipping and sliding. At those moments, God made them stand up. He intervened on their behalf. So here's 2 groups of people we see. Paul refers to it as people who are outside and people who are inside. Right? He says, when he is writing to the Corinthians specifically, he tells them, I'm not talking about the people outside in the world. They don't know God. I'm talking to you, Corinthians, who have chosen to be the people inside. Right? So now we see a division. People who are outside and inside. And then God's wrath was, appropriate. Okay, before going further into that, what does anger mean to you? What is anger?
You're not happy. You're not happy with what's going on, so you get angry.
You're not happy. You're mad. Now, all these descriptions, do they stem out of feelings? How you feel at that moment? Right? Okay. Now, love. We see anger as a feeling. You're not happy. You're mad at something on that situation. Right? Okay. What is love?
The opposite.
The opposite. Is love also a feeling? Is it like, hey, you are behaving so well. I love you today. Tomorrow, you make me upset. I'm angry with you. I don't love you. Is that love? No. Then what is love? A choice. Okay, let's move on in this way. Now, when we say anger and love are opposites, can one be a choice and another just a feeling that passes by? They are both choices. That's something interesting, right? Do you have a comment? No. Let's take it a little bit further here. There is love, which is a choice. When did God choose to love us? Before He created us. In the beginning. Even when the thought of creating us came up, right? Even when the thought of creating man came up, God decided, I will love this man that I create with the free will, no matter what he chooses, to such an extent that the only begotten Son will be sent to die in his place. Is that a great love? A choice made even before he could see. Isn't that interesting? So it was not, oh, I created this man, formed him so handsome, with so many attributes, I'm going to love him. No. It was way back that he chose to love. So when in his choice to love, there was included a sacrifice, if needed. It was needed, and we know how it all played out, but the choice was there way before. It was not formed by some feeling at a point. It was not falling in love and falling out of love. It was a choice made. And he stuck with the choice. The same way, anger, can we see anger as a choice? That's, it is something strange. Let's delve on it a little more. Yeah.
Both love and anger, they are an emotion that can be brought through something like injustice or something that happens. So they all can come naturally, but you can always even control them, and you can choose. So they have similar similar things.
You can love somebody, but you don't like their choices.
Yes.
So you love your kids. I do not love what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree totally with the road they're heading. I know where they're heading, and that's the same thing with God. God loves us, yet He says, I love you. I do not like the sin that you are committing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So because He loves us, He keeps knocking at our door so we can accept Him, so we can come to Him until our eyes are open and we see He loves me. He died for me. Therefore, I do not want to sin. I do not want to hurt Him. And, that's why we pray for our kids, our loved ones, so they can make choices, make the right choice. They can click. It's like, okay, because of gratitude, I will serve you. And I am thankful for what you have done. I recognize the price
Okay.
for my sins.
So here, there is a choice, and there is also some feeling. So these are love and anger could be emotions that are evoked, but at the same time, there is a choice factor involved, right? And we can choose. I remember my kids are all, my youngest is almost 18. So they are all almost into their adulthood, three of them. When they are little, one thing that I learned was to never punish them in anger. There are things they do which would provoke us to anger, but whenever I felt angry, I did not deal with them. If I'm angry, I would go drink water. I would count. I would take my time to cool down. I would not take my hands against them. I will not. I will take time to cool down. I will think of the situation where they provoked me, and then we will sit down. We will discuss. I would talk with my children about it, and they know that it is going to be a long talk because I don't want to do anything. When I'm angry, I needed to cool down. And after I was completely cooled down, then I would say, hey, this was something you shouldn't have done. And I think I have to use the rod because it was done deliberately. And after all that time, I might give something in their hand, a stick, that they would remember in future. But never because I was so angry enough to hit them. Right? So there are consequences that are needed, but not because that you are angry enough to hit and vent. Right? Now, we think of what Jesus did at the temple, right? He went, turned down the tables, took a whip. I was thinking on that. Was Jesus so angry at that moment that he couldn't control himself and had to push things away and topple things down and hit them? Or was he doing what we would do to dust off things? Right? If there was a blanket that needs to be dusted off, go hang it up somewhere, take a rod, beat it so the dust would come off of it, right? Would that be done in anger or in a controlled way as to really bring the dirt out? Yes.
With the example that you gave, there's also a verse that says, you can be angry, but don't spend a day. Which means you can be angry because there's something not right. But do not spend a day, which means you can be angry, but quickly think about it and control yourself and change so that things can be okay. Because anger can stop love. You see, there are two related things. It can stop love. Because you are angry, you can even say some things that can even break your marriage. You can even say something to your wife or to your husband so much that he feels, no, there is no love here. But you can still take your forgiveness from God, and your faith, the faith that he gives us is the one that attain us to get that forgiveness. Then after taking that from God, then we can be able to get that love back. So it's tricky.
It's tricky. I will come to the point that you presented. But then before this, after studying, there are many things on the face level. On the first view, it looks as something. But when we start digging deeper, we get a different perspective and understanding. At that point, I believe that Jesus had to speak in the language of the Pharisees. He had to show his love the way it is understood, and at that point, the whip and turning of tables was necessary. Jesus did not work in the passion that came up, but in a choice, controlled way that it had to be done. We can see it and see, hey, we only turn tables or push things away when we are angry. But no, it could be done in a controlled way because that is the language that would be understood. For my children, I did not hit them when I was angry, but I explained and I said, I want you to remember it deeply, so I am giving it to you. A choice that was intentionally made and done, but not at the spur of the moment because I'm filled with passion. The same thing with this anger, as you were bringing out, sometimes you feel angry, right? Many years ago, probably at least 10 or 12 years ago, I was attending a marriage seminar, right? And they were asking questions, trying to show how the interaction should be between man and wife. And then they asked for a volunteer. So I go up. And then they gave me a scenario and asked me how you would react. Okay? The scenario is this. You have a letter that needs to go on the mail that day. It is probably acceptance of a job offer or something which would change your life in the future. Very, very important. And you give it to your husband who's on his way to work. And he says, see, this is the important letter. It has to be mailed today. You explain. You tell him again, please, please don't forget to mail this. My life depends on it. Okay? He comes back in the evening. And there is that letter. He said, oh, I forgot, is his answer. How would you react? How would you react? And my response was, I'll be angry. How could he forget after telling him so many times, right? Is there any explanation at all for that? That is tough to think about it that way. It's like you disregarded it. You don't care about my life, my choices. You did not mail it. Forgetting or not forgetting is something else. You did not do what I wanted you to do, and it affects me in a bad way. And the anger would, and I will be angry. I cannot say I will not be angry, right? But then this question was in my heart very deeply. I said, how can I not be angry? You know, it was something that is affecting me in a bad way. How can I not be angry? 2 years. This question kept coming to me again and again and again. How can I not be angry in the face of such a situation? And then one day, my mom lived close by. Yeah, this was in Maryland. And I called my mom in the morning. I said, Mom, I would pick you up on the way to church. So that was the plan. But then I get into the car. I start driving. My mind goes into an autopilot mode. I drive directly to the church. We go both went to different Sabbath school classes. So I went to the one I usually go to. The classes are finished, and then I walk to where I expect to see my mom. I open the door and I'm like, I didn't pick her up. I didn't pick her up, and it did not occur to me until at that moment. So I'm like, oh no, my mom would always be the first person at the church. She would not like to miss it. And so I'm like, oh, what did I do? I messed up. I made her miss her Sabbath class. And so I try to walk out the church, walk towards the door. I see her coming. It was snowing outside. So she comes all bundled with snow on her. She has walked to church. So when she entered, there was not a single word of anger. You did not pick me up. Nothing of that sort. She says, are you okay? Is everything fine with you? And I was really taken back. I thought, I messed up. I forgot to pick her up. I made her miss the Sabbath school lesson which she dearly loves. And made her walk in the snow, in the cold, and she's coming up and saying, are you okay? And that love struck me. And then I felt God tell me, that's why you cannot be angry. That's why you cannot feel anger. And it really, really struck a chord with me. If the choice for your love is big enough, is wide enough, is deep enough, as He chose to love us, you can not be angry. If you loved your husband, that's hard. If you choose to love your husband, even when you don't feel like it, then when he messes up, you can be without anger. That was a big lesson for me. Yeah. So when we see about God's wrath, which is an opposite of love, we can see it as not something that was triggered by our actions, triggered by, whatever the situation is, but we can see it is intentional wrath against sin. As you said, when the children do something wrong, we don't like it. God is not for sin at all. Everything wrong would be burnt up in His presence. So, even anger and wrath is intentional in view of divine love. Let that sink in. You're not angry because something is happening. You're angry and you have wrath because that's not a thing of love. It is love is an intentional choice and wrath is an intentional choice because that love cannot cover that, right? Yes.
The more we know Jesus, the more we come close to him, we become positive. So the positiveness will always bring a positive answer. And the more we know Jesus is the more we also understand that everything we do in life, there's someone who is leading us. We might go to Nineveh, Tarshish, wherever we are going, but if God is somewhere where he wants you to be, you are always going to be there. Because he's the one who plans our life. We don't plan anything.
Amen. God plans our life for us. It was also interesting that the story, in after every week's lesson, there is a small mission story, an inside story, right? I love to read the story. And today, after this week's lesson, is also a snippet of the story. It's like this week, and it continues. But then it talks about a lay missionary, Joanne Park Kim. This lady went to Mongolia as a missionary. Okay? While she is on the mission station, the place where she is, she goes out, she's attacked by 4 drunken men. She is hurt. She comes back, locks herself in the house. And she's like, God, why did you bring me here to Mongolia to be attacked by these drunken men? And she is like suffering. Her heart is broken. And then she doesn't want to meet anyone, but then a knock on the door. There is a fellow missionary, another person, comes up, and he did not show her words of pity. He did not say, oh, I'm so sorry you were hurt by the 4 drunken men. He scolds her. What did he scold her for? Why are you holed up in your room? Didn't you come here to be a missionary? Yes, you were hurt by the men, but don't stop being a missionary. Go out there. Go serve. She says, if he had spoken words of like comfort for her at that moment, she would have wallowed in her misery. She would have returned. But his words of rebuke at the face of suffering took her back to serve and be on her mission. And she prayed, God, you allowed me to be hurt by these men. And this was not a one-time thing. There were many times she would go out. Even reading this story, I was thinking, why in the world you would keep yourself in a position where you could be repeatedly, attacked by drunken men? But then she says, she kept at it. She said, God, you help me. And God helped her to learn the Mongolian, because that was a point when she was hurt. She didn't even know the language. She couldn't ask for anyone for help. But here, she prays, and God gave her the mastery of the language. And then she went again. It's not that the attacks stopped. There were other times she was attacked by drunken men. But then she says, there was a time she was walking. It was sub-zero weather, and there was a drunken man lying on the side. She said, these drunken men attack me all the time. I'm going to ignore and walk. But she heard God's voice. No. Go, take him to safety. She said, he's heavy. How can I? Go, try. She goes, holds him, drags him to the entryway of a house where it was a little bit warm so he will not freeze to death. And in the act of helping, she felt God give her the love for that drunken man. She saved her life. She continued on as a missionary and she established a first church in that area where there was none. You know, it was really hard for me to relate with that. You are attacked multiple times and you persist. How could that be? You know, God has to give me the understanding. God does, even if it takes time. You know, in the face of adversity, how can you love? And divine love is a choice which could love in the face of everything, however bad it could be. The divine love will not be replaced by anger and wrath. Never, never. But the divine love will give place for intentional wrath, which would be redemptive. Right? Even with the Pharaoh or whoever it was, God intervened. The people of Nineveh. Do you know how cruel Ninevites were? Do you know that? Why did Jonah hate them with such intense hatred? He ran away from giving them the gospel. That was not a gospel at that time. You're going to be destroyed in 40 days is not a gospel, but he knew the love of God, right? And why was he angry that they were spared? Because the people of Nineveh were cruel to destroy your identity. When they attack the Israelites or any people, what they will do is split them up, spread them around. So, the Jewish people had a hatred for Samaritans, right? Because the Samaritans were people who were somewhere captured by Assyrians, brought in, and resettled. So they would actually split up families and make them completely forget their heritage and will not leave them any semblance of who they were. They were evil. They will break you apart. They would make you. Do you recognize that in history? Has that happened? You know, dislocate and completely destroy their identity. It was when some lions came and attacked in Samaria that they sent some priests in to teach them about the God of Israel, who was the God in that land, and the people who were settled in the Israelite land started worshipping the Israelite God. Do you remember what the lady, the Samaritan lady who Jesus spoke with says? We worship the same God. Because they were taught to do it to escape from the attacks of the lions. And so, with this being the history, he hates them. Jewish people are very, very strong in their identity, right? That is the identity that God chose them. And now the Assyrians completely make them get away from it. They were evil. And so Jonah was grieved by that evil. Is that right for him to be angry? But what does God ask him? Is it right for you to be angry? Right? Is it right for us to be angry? When we see evil, is it right for us to be angry? What is that righteous indignation? It is your anger should not be something evoked when you see anger, but it is something you choose to be whenever God's law is broken. So it's not something instantaneous because you are put in such a situation, but because you know what is the law of God and you choose to be with wrath against whatever breaks God's law. So you will not become angry when you see evil, but right now you choose to be angry for the evil of telling lies, for the evil of killing someone, for the evil of stealing the other things, right? You choose to be angry. Does that make a big difference? You just cannot be provoked to anger, but you will choose. And then when you choose that, do you know where it would be focused first? Not to the others who you are judging to be telling a lie, but when you know you are telling a lie. Does that give a perspective? Because God says, "Judge not, that you shall not, you be not judged," right? So how can you judge now someone? Hey, that person is stealing. Hey, that person is lying. Who are you to judge? But you know when something like that happens in your heart. When you take something that's not due to you, what is that called? Will you be angry with that? Do you choose to be angry with that? Because many times we forgive ourselves. We are perfect in our eyes. Unless God's light comes and shines, we would be blind to it. We will not see it. We would feel sometimes that I am entitled to it. I should get it. So I got it. There's nothing wrong, no stealing. And when you don't know God, exactly. When you don't know God, when His presence and His guidance is not there, then it goes in a wrong direction. Yes.
Anger, lastly, we can say God created it, anger. And why? Because He created it not like something bad, but something for us to motivate us. When we are seeing something that is not good or injustice, it will motivate us to address it. But we shouldn't address it in the anger. But it's just clicking into our heads to say something. Because there are some people who are now seeing, like you are saying, someone stealing, they don't feel anything, they just look and they see it's okay. The way is that anger of not wanting to see injustice, it's gone because there's no connection with God. So that anger, it shouldn't be like to kill someone, but it should be to motivate you to action, to address some things and do something right, but not to hate or to destroy.
Okay. So you're presenting anger as a feeling that is a motivation to address something. But then I'm thinking of it in a different way. when God created love, was love complete? I mean, when God is love, God is complete, right? In that completeness of love, where is the place of anger?
Like when you can be seeing someone, you can see someone, you love that person. Not as like your husband and wife, you love that person. You are trying all means to say, like a mother and a child, you are trying to show love and to show that this is correct, but the child is not seeing that. Is not seeing that. You can be angered, though you are not going to act, but I don't know whether it's anger or what. You can be pricked, motivated to say, how can I make him understand that I love him? How can, so that's the connection.
Okay. So, what comes here is you are seeing something that you do not agree with, right?
You are showing love and it's not being recognized.
You are showing love and it is not being recognized.
And you are trying
How do you know that it is not being recognized? Obedience. Okay. So here it comes that you are expecting that something should be done, right? And that is not being done. And you interpret it as you hurt because what you expected is not done.
yeah, I can give an example. Just let me go back to your husband and wife.
Okay, go ahead.
The wife is showing all means that a wife should do. She's respecting, she's doing, but the husband is not seeing it. Then you see the wife can start to be angry. Why?
Why? I'll give you an answer. Because there is an expectation. See? You are expecting that something be done by the other person. Correct? Yes. But what I'm saying is, still it comes back to the wife. God talks about a servant, right? When a servant does what he is supposed to do, can he go and expect the master to say every time, hey, you did it well, you did it well? He's doing what is he supposed to do. Do you remember that? So now, a wife is doing what she's supposed to do. Good job. God sees that. Why is there an expectation from a human to say, hey, I recognize you did this, 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 this? You know, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's human. I am personally have been in situation where I have asked my husband, see, I did all this and you didn't even notice that. So, I have done that. Don't take me wrong. My husband knows. But then, what I'm saying is, there is something beyond that. In this situation, there is something beyond love. There is an expectation for me to be recognized. There is an expectation of, I did it. Why don't you give some words of appreciation? It's not just love. Even with the children, I might say, hey, I want you to mow the lawn. And the child refuses, rebels. And I am here like, I told you, you should have done this. Or maybe I think the right person to choose as a life partner is not this person, but that person. His life is going to depend on that. But my son makes a wrong choice. I am like, it's going to affect your life, right? You are making a wrong choice. So there are so many things we would feel it, but if we really look at it, there is a judgment going on. And there is like, I did it. I brought you up, and this is how much you show back to me, right? But then love goes beyond that. Divine love is much more than that. The same thing, you know, as you were sharing, it brought my mind back to what I've read in Eric B. Hare's stories. Has anyone heard his stories, read them. Eric Beher was a missionary to Burma. And there was a time when Japanese soldiers attacked Burma and they had to leave the mission station. And they could take whatever they can carry and leave. They are leaving for their life. And Eric Beher was, first he sees people with their carts loaded, and then as they go further and further, they have to drop things off. And he also says that people automatically separated when it came night time and they were to retire. They went to the right side and to the left. The people on the right side were people who were grateful for their life. They were happy that they are still escaping with their life, even if they didn't have their possessions. There were people who were very, very rich, with servants doing everything for them, and now they are just carrying their own stuff and walking. And to the left were people who were grumbling, and they were so unhappy that the government did not protect them. They were like cursing and bitter. If any man from the left came over to the right, he just couldn't tolerate it. He would be so upset seeing their happiness. You can see songs of joy being sung on the right and grumbling on the left. And they'll cover their ears and run away because they did not, or they couldn't. Their heart was very unhappy with the joy. The people who were joyful, when they heard the bitterness and cursing, they couldn't stay there. It was a natural separation by the choices they made. So, when we make a choice and stand by it, it is hard. We are human. There are times we fail, but the divine love gives us an example. It gave us an example when God asked Jonah, do you have a right to be angry? Because he is slow to anger. He saw so much. Isn't there anything God hasn't seen? Right? Wasn't there so many situations where he could have come down and struck them with fire? But he chooses to be angry. He chooses to exhibit his wrath when needed. On his choice, not as it is provoked. Anger doesn't have to be provoked in us. He is slow to anger. The righteous indignation is not is something that is provoked by circumstance or instance. Righteous indignation. So when that righteous comes, it is showing that it is right, on the point. It is a good thing which will play out indignation in the presence of something hateful. So it's not even a motivating feeling that comes up suddenly. The righteous indignation is an act of choice. So,
In the temple.
yes.
The righteous indignation because he was passionate about his father's
Uh-huh.
and it was
He was dusting the rug. He was pulling the things out that should not be there. He was using a whip to clean it out. Everything Jesus did was intentional. Even at a point when the Samaritans were not welcoming, when James and John, the brothers, said, God, call fire to come upon and destroy them. Did he do that? No. Because no matter what, you do not give place to an upheaval of anger because of the situation. If you think about it, wasn't Jesus seeing the money changers right from when he was a child? Did that indignation play out when he was 12 years old and came into the sanctuary? Wasn't that a temple of his God? Did he not know that he was the Son of God? He waited. Did he not go to the temple for the 30 years until he started his ministry? He was going there year after year. Wasn't he 18, 19, 20 years old when he went? Did he ever turn the money changers table at those times? Wasn't he strong in the prime of his age? So, when he did turn it out, it was not because he was feeling the anger at that moment. No. It was an intentional decision. If it was just a spur of the anger, he could have done it before. If it was something he feeling only at that time, wasn't that a common scenario he saw year after year? So, there is a place for righteous indignation for things that are not aligned with the law of God, and even that wrath should be played out not because you're feeling angry and moved by an impulse at a particular point, but with an intentional choice. And that is the right place for righteous indignation. If you are moved by feeling, pause, stop, consider. You know, our frontal lobe, a seat of thinking, right? It is very, very important that it is in the right performing condition, because it's with that we make decision. But the anger and the feelings is with the limbic system, right? So when there is a divine love and a wrath that's attached with it, we have to be really clear that there is a willing choice. Even on Wednesday's lesson, it says God does not afflict willingly. So if he does it, it is with an intentional need, all the pros and cons considered, and the situation analyzed. You know, he may have been having some criteria when to turn the tables, right? Who is it that should feel the whip? It was not just like anyone out there would have felt it, because Jesus was intentional. So if he is so intentional and compassionate, how are we to behave? His justice, that's why he says, do not. You know, it would be nice if we can read that. Where is that? Let's read Matthew 21, 12, and 13. That's where we see him turning down the. Let's read Matthew 21, verses 12 and 13. If someone has it, can you please read?
In the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. And said unto them, It is written, My house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves.
If you see it, it's almost close to his time on earth. It was a time that he had to intentionally teach something that made a big impact. You know, for a deaf person, how do you communicate? With actions, right? He's been preaching and it's been falling on deaf man's ears. And now he had to intentionally show some action. Not because of anger, which was provoked, but because of righteous indignation that he had to teach. Right? And let's read Jeremiah 51, verses 24 and 25. If anyone has it, please read. Jeremiah 51, verses 24 and 25.
All their evil that they have done in Zion, in your sight, saith the Lord. Verse 25. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth. And I will stretch out my hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain.
A burnt mountain. He will take away everything that is on the path of his righteousness, right? Even if it is a mountain, he will make it a burnt mountain. Things that are not in the path of righteousness will be taken down by him. He's not giving us that duty. And how about Romans chapter 12, verses 17 to 21? Romans 12.
Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good.
Isn't that interesting? Does he say when someone does evil to you, retaliate? Because you have righteous indignation? Because what they are doing is evil? Evil shouldn't motivate us. Not to feel anything. Not to feel anger. Not to do things. It should be intentional. God does not want us to take every tear he will wipe away. Yes, there is evil. Yes, there are people who are very, very cruel, right? There are things that's done that shouldn't even be spoken of or shouldn't even come in the thoughts. But it is happening. It is happening. And what does he say? What does he say about what we do with it? Leave it to me. I'll avenge it. I will give it what it needs. We are weak. He is strong. He can give it much more than what we can. We feel it in anger. We feel it with the feelings that's evoked by seeing sin and evil. But God says, you know what? Live peaceably with everyone, with all. Right? Not just with those who are good, not those who are make you happy, but with all. And he says he will take care.
I wanted to read this verse, James 1, verse 19 to 20. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of men worketh not righteousness of God. So the only person who has been given right to wrath is God, not us, because our wrath is dangerous.
Our wrath is dangerous. Thank you for reading it. You know, as I was studying for this lesson, I felt like writing. I haven't written a poem or anything in a long time, but I was moved to write this. Love, a choice, not a feeling. No man was there, just a thought thereof. No world created at that moment far off. A small council sat to make a plan to form in future a human clan. Not something plain, but an artist's work. But before on this plan they did embark, a choice was made to love and cherish this race that would have freedom to flourish. What if they were to walk into danger? The omniscient mind knew all things in future. Still, there was a willing love in place to forgive, redeem, and cover in grace. Unfathomable is this love supreme. Can we even know this in our dream? This love did bring to humanity a healing, for it was not based on just a feeling. Don't we have feelings that have a role to play? Didn't he feel it as he made man from clay? Yes, feelings do follow the choice that is made. But choices by feelings are never ever obeyed. Isn't wrath a result of feeling bitter anger? Didn't God punish with his divine fervor? Yes, sure. Angels of destruction came from him when Israel did rebel and behave at whim. But did he cut off his connection though? Not at all. Even in rebellion, so. He shielded and protected his wayward group and led them on to be a victorious troop. His wrath and anger was but short lived, while his heart of love never ceased. He chose to love his tribe of Judah and in integrity to always to be together. I have my God who's kind and merciful, full of love and abundantly graceful. He asks me if I've the right to be angry, which makes me instantly to regret and cry. I can't be angry. How could I? The love I choose to anger says goodbye. Freely I've received, only freely can I give. In his love's shadow, as long as I live. The Lord knows it's hard in this humanity weak. Have faith, he says. If only you speak, my power will I to you give. gladly bring. To move mountains or open water spring. Repay to no one evil for evil. Live with everyone in ways civil. All your hurts and tears will I wipe. With love, a choice, not a feeling that swipes. I love you. I cherish you. You are mine. With your imperfections, you're still fine. Only have faith and believe in fact. I'll save you, making you perfect. Sometimes it feels like impossible, but with God, all things are possible. We can always move by choice and not by feelings that are provoked. God's wrath is there in his divine love, and his love is supreme. Okay, let's pray to close. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this wonderful lesson explaining your wrath in divine love. Yes, Lord, your love that's divine, that's supreme, it's sometimes hard for us even to understand. But we pray that you will keep us within that love always, always, always. Even when our feelings seem to overtake us, help us to choose wisely, choose intentionally, and make a choice sometimes, even before we find ourselves in a situation that would provoke us. Help us, O Lord, because you've promised that you would give us what we ask. And this is according to your will, O Lord. I submit each one of them who are gathered over here, that we all would reflect your character, that you would perfect your will in us. You will mold us according to your plan and prepare us to meet you in the heavenly realms and live with you for eternity in the place, the mansions that you are preparing for us. Be with us, O Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.